Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where it looks like World War Z 2 is finally going to move forward. A fascinating story of behind-the-scenes drama and behind-the-scenes friendships. Aww! As the Three Musketeers-like duo assembles to finally move the project forward. But it's weird. What could delay the sequel to a film that grossed $540 million and is the biggest box office hit of Brad Pitt's career, right? Well, let me tell you. First off, Brad Pitt, quite the savvy producer. As I like to point out, he's an actor, but he's only won an Oscar for producing. So far, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. His career is far from over. But Mark Forster directed the first World War Z, and it was not a good choice. The film was fraught with problems. The whole last third had to be rewritten and refilmed. And so I think Brad Pitt wanted to make sure that for the sequel, he got a good director from the start. I have to say, well, I don't know why anybody would hire Mark Forster after the debacle that was Quantum of Solace. Maybe he sold everyone on that being the fault of the writer's strike, but I think now we can say it was the writer's strike and Mark Forster that torpedoed Quantum of Solace. Oh, so much capital loss from Casino Royale. Although I do think that Daniel Craig's Bond is still coasting on that Casino Royale capital. But anyway, he secured J.A. Bayona for the gig, a very talented director, but it was in a holding pattern, and J.A. Bayona got restless, being like, look at all these projects that are passing me up that I can't do because I'm stuck waiting for World War Z 2 to start. And then J.A. Bayona got offered Jurassic World 2, and so he managed to get out of his contract. That was a real motivator. So losing J.A. Bayona was a big problem for Brad Pitt, and so he went in search of another director. Now, he's been flirting with his old pal, David Fincher, for a while now, but there were other issues at hand. One was that Paramount has been floundering, doing very poorly at the box office. At the bottom of the pack when it comes to the studios are Paramount and Sony. Both are working very hard to fix the situation at hand. Brad Grey, in fact, was fired, and it's interesting because Brad Grey is a very good friend and longtime collaborator with Brad Pitt. As you might recall, Brad Grey used to be a manager, and he managed Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston, and then they started a production company together, Plan B, which Brad Pitt got in the divorce and has become quite successful, not only making films like World War Z, but Oscar winners like Moonlight and 12 Years a Slave, etc. Very successful company. Brad Pitt and The Lost City of Z he likes Z. The Lost City of Z is his as well. Very successful. So Brad Grey was out, and as you might recall, a couple of months ago, they were trying to replace him, and it was very difficult. Nobody wanted the job. They were losing people to, Scott Stuber ended up going to Netflix. So finally, they took Fox's reject, Jim Giannopoulos, who one of the reasons he agreed to take the gig was that he got green light power. So he has the ability to solely green light pictures at Paramount. And he's taking a hard look at World War Z 2, and is expected to green light in the next few weeks, especially if David Fincher comes on board as director, as it looks like he's going to do. Now, why would David Fincher do this? Well, not only is he friends with Pitt, but also Jim Giannopoulos, who, when he was at Fox, running Fox, they did Gone Girl, which was Fincher's last film. And that, of course, turned out great. And then, of course, Pitt also was a little bit delayed because of his divorce drama. Not only, and I think that's not, you can't even really categorize that as drama because his personal life imploded, right? I mean, he had a very embarrassing divorce. Angelina Jolie did her best to totally embarrass him and to accuse him of child abuse, I think, in an effort to, it's really hard to surmise what's going on there, but the fact that the story went away, I think means that it was, an effort. Angelina Jolie is a very tough character. She's very good at using the press to benefit her. And I think that she went very aggressively after Brad Pitt to paint him in a negative light to try and get the sympathy in the divorce and also custody of their 6 children. We'll see how everything works out. I think it's settled down. I think Brad Pitt, you'll see him start to emerge. And part of that emergence is World War Z 2. And so you have a team here of Brad Pitt and David Fincher. This will be their 4th collaboration. And I think that audiences, I liked the first World War Z. I thought it was like a Vanity Fair blockbuster. I thought, like the editorial, or the articles, the very well researched articles they write at Vanity Fair. I loved it. It was glossy yet intellectual. Brad Pitt's character, I believe, as you might recall, worked for the UN, and it kind of had like a UN kind of feel to it. I thought it was great. So I loved it, and I'm very excited for a sequel. And obviously a number of people people enjoyed it, or it wouldn't have made $540 million. And I think that when you put David Fincher in the director's chair, he's such a talented director, and it's another reteaming with Pitt after 7, Fight Club, and to some degree Benjamin Button, the weakest of their collaborations. But still, I think audiences aren't going to want to pass that up. I think it's going to be just absolutely fabulous. And Jim Giannopoulos, who Fincher has a working relationship, is also going to be there. So it's a really, as I said, the Three Musketeers making World War Z 2. But I have to say, they need the, I forget the name, the fourth one who hung out with the Three Musketeers, right? Was it like D'Artagnan, right? I'm not sure. But we need Drew Goddard to be that member of the crew, because I think he was crucial to the first film's success. He helped rewrite the last third, which I really loved. Some people said, oh, it turned into a different movie. I thought it was great. It was so fun with the Pepsi can, right? I think it was a Pepsi can. Product placement, but it was just fabulous. I really liked the end. I thought it was really clever, really smart, and I think there were, correlation to The Martian, which Drew Goddard wrote. A very fun, exciting, but very smart movie. So I think that I hope Brad Pitt and his savviness will go to Drew Goddard and be like, what's it going to take? And Drew Goddard's a little busy right now. Fox, speaking of Fox, just picked up his super secretive project, Bad Times at the El Royale, which will see him in the director's chair again. He, of course, directed Cabin in the Woods, but he's mostly being a writer these days. So he's eager, of course, to show what he can do as a director still. But I'd be like, come on. If I give you, like, I don't know, $2 to $5 million, will you write World War Z 2 as well? I think Drew Goddard's a professional screenwriter. He should be able to turn that out in about a month. So I'm curious, that's the first story of the day. Are you interested in World War Z 2 on its own? Are you interested in it now with David Fincher at the helm? And what do you think of all the behind-the-scenes drama and friendships? All right, so the second story of the day, speaking of directors, is that James Mangold has announced via social media that he is releasing a black and white version of Logan on May 16th. He said, clear your schedule. And this is a twofer, make no mistake about it. On the one hand, it promotes the Blu-ray release on May 23rd, and that is a very fast turnaround. I'm really amazed at how fast they get this stuff out digitally these days. I think it's going to get even faster, maybe by the end of the year. And I think that, again, I'm very much in favor of that, to get movie theaters to literally clean up their act and control their audience. I've had a couple of you write me lately about horrible movie theater experiences, and management just doesn't do anything about it. It's like the Wild West in there. It's like, let's put a bunch of strangers in a dark room and have them watch a movie together. So anyway, and have them all think that they're at home for some reason. All right, so anyway, so they're going to promote the May 23rd release of the Blu-ray, which I wonder if it'll have a black and white version on there as well. But then also, make no mistake, this is to get that awards campaign going. And what headline do they want? They want a box office win for this black and white release on May 16th. And it can be done. As you might recall, The Killing Joke was released on Monday, July 25th in a couple of theaters, not that many, and it was a Fathom event, and it managed to debut at number 3 with 3.1 million. That's excellent. And so I think they're going to want a similar kind of effect with the black and white version of Logan. And I think that's a good weekend to pick, because King Arthur will have just opened. Snatched will be the Amy Schumer movie. I'm very nervous about how that's going to do. The world seems to have really turned on Amy Schumer, but we'll see if that's just like online community. If like the trolls have really done a good job of hurting her online, but if there's still like grassroots support for her out, with actual moviegoers. And then Guardians of the Galaxy will be coming off of its second weekend. So I think there's a real space there. You don't want to go up against Alien Covenant the next weekend, but I think there's a really nice space there to potentially get that headline they're looking for. But the question is, can they get it? I think that the repeatability factor was low on Logan, which is why the box office wasn't quite where I think they would have liked it to be. I mean, it was very, very strong, make no mistake about it, but it wasn't a Deadpool, it wasn't a X-Men Days of Future Past, because it was such a dark downer of a movie, right? You're like, I already cried my eyes out, I'm gonna take a break, thank you. And so I think that, and also there was no like end credit sequence, there was no tease for anything else, which makes sense obviously, but that hurts you, again, your repeatability factor. And I have similar concerns about Guardians of the Galaxy's repeatability factor, because of its lack of, cinematic universes are such a strong box office contender because they are woven into a larger tapestry. So if you don't do the weaving, I think it can hurt you financially. But anyway, I think that to make sure people go to this black and white screening, they haven't announced all the details yet, just the date. I hope that they will add an incentive, like exclusive interviews, behind the scenes footage that you can see in advance, just something to make people go and pay to see it in the theater. Because I'm curious, if it's just a black and white version of Logan, will you pay to see it in the theater, even though in just like 2 weeks, or actually 1 week, you can get it on Blu-ray, and then you can spend your money on owning it. So I'm just curious, and also I am very interested to see if Logan can be an awards contender, because you might recall that Deadpool got a lot of Golden Globe nominations, major ones, Best Picture and Best Actor, both for comedy, but it was shut out of the Oscars. So it's a tall order to make it to the Oscars. I think Logan has a chance, but it came out so early, and all these other X-Men movies were announced. I think it hurts it a little bit. So this headline would help. And also I'd be curious if the movie would play well in black and white. So we'll see. So that's the second story of the day. The third story is that Stephen King is really having a career resurgence. Now, of course, he never really went away. He's always been a big name in Hollywood and for audiences for decades. But soon he might be reaching Stan Lee status, and perhaps they should have him do cameos in his films, right? Like Stan Lee. But just think about it. What a banner year he's having. It is the most watched trailer ever in the first 24 hours. The remake. The Dark Tower is coming out finally. The trailer should debut this week for Guardians of the Galaxy. And now it was just announced they're doing a Firestarter remake, which is one of Drew Barrymore's earliest films. And I think it's actually a perfect fit for today's audiences. It's about a young pyrotechnic taken in by the government to be used as a weapon. It's a little Stranger Thingsy too, right? I'll be curious to see what time period they set the movie in. But Jason Blum is going to produce. Talk about savvy producers. I think he's one of the savviest producers working in Hollywood today. For instance, when they were doing coverage of this Firestarter thing, I'm sure his agent was like, put this in the article. They pointed out that Get Out and Split this year have made $500 million globally, but cost combined, just $15 million to make. That's amazing. And M. Night Shyamalan paid for his own movie. So that's stunning. So Jason Blum doing very well, and he announced this with Akiva Goldsman, who's going to, I think, definitely direct, but I believe write as well. And you might be like, why Akiva Goldsman? He's so horrible. When he's good, he's mediocre, and when he's bad, he's unwatchable. That Beautiful Mind Oscar is going to keep him working forever, though, and it's really unfortunate. And he's also a writer on Dark Tower, which is very scary, to be honest with you. But he already has a working relationship with Jason Blum. He directed a movie called Stephanie. He didn't write it, though. He just directed it, so that means there's some hope for Stephanie. But it debuted late last week or over the weekend at the Overlook Film Festival, which takes place at the hotel from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, which is interesting because Stephen King didn't like that adaptation. But anyway, I think it's a solid idea. The only thing I don't like about this is that Akiva Goldsman is anywhere near it. But it's such a strong idea, and Stephen King is so strong right now as a brand, it could work. We'll see. And also, there's a strong group of child actors out there right now. You could think maybe McKenna Grace. I didn't like her so much in Gifted, but I thought she did a pretty nice job in How to Be a Latin Lover. And I know based on how many of you leapt to her defense in my Gifted review, she seems to have a fan base, so I'd be maybe casting her. But why not switch it to a little boy? It's always a little girl with these things. Hannah was a girl, etc. Let's make it a guy. And we have some great child actors there as well, Jacob Tremblay, and also Rafael Alejandro from How to Be a Latin Lover. And so I think either of those would be great. And I think just when you look like what Josh Trank tried to do with Fantastic Four and horror, I think this could be, and also Josh Boone said he's going to try and do it with horror as well with New Mutants. I really want to see horror move into the comic book realm. And Jay Bayona said that he's going to do horror for Jurassic World too. So I think this is a great idea, and perhaps the new trend, the new it trend, literally. All right. So those are the three stories of the day. Now, the viewer question comes from Corey Smith, and Corey says, Grace, I'm a first-time commenter. Oh, first time's the lucky charm, right? You got your question answered right away. It happens to be very appropriate to right now. So Corey says, my question is about Dwayne Johnson, because I've had these concerns too, Corey. So Corey says, he seems to have taken over the Fast and Furious series and has shoehorned his way into the DCEU, with Black Adam getting a movie before Shazam. I was also upset that he took to Instagram with Henry Cavill and promoted, alcohol, apparently without the DCEU's knowledge, right? I'm like, whoa, if you want to make some money on the side, Dwayne Johnson, that's cool. And if you want to help out Henry Cavill, that's fine. But don't take the DCIP in there too, all right? So anyway, Corey says, do you eventually see Hollywood or the public turning on him? I wouldn't say turning on him. I mean, he'd have to do, I mean, Dwayne Johnson's so personable and he has such a legion of fans. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think getting tired of him could be the issue. Although you never know. I think that Jennifer Lawrence made a real mistake continuing with Mystique and while unwilling to play the character as you're supposed to. I think that's really hurt her, and I think she doesn't I think she and her team perhaps have underestimated how much that has hurt her. But anyway, I think that Dwayne Johnson, I think that he just has to be careful not to overexpose himself. I think that's something that Mark Wahlberg has done. Mark Wahlberg, I love Mark Wahlberg, but he's made so many movies lately. I think people are like, I feel like I just saw a Mark Wahlberg movie, and I feel like I just saw that Mark Wahlberg movie. And he's made great movies. I thought that both Deepwater Horizon and Patriots Day were quite good. One I saw in the theaters, Deepwater Horizon, one I saw later, you know, when it became available on streaming. But they were very similar, same director, Peter Berg. So I think that ended up hurting, you know, both of them. I think, you know, I think he makes the same movie all the time. And so I think that's a problem for Mark Wahlberg. And I think the same could happen to Dwayne Johnson. We're going to talk about it later. We're not going to talk about it too much, but it's in my notes for Movie Math later today that he just really did a great job with The Fate of the Furious. And then just a few weeks later, he has Baywatch coming out. And I'll be curious to see if people are like, I just saw Dwayne Johnson. I don't know if we're there just yet, but he has so many movies coming up, I'm not quite sure. And also, I think he better be really faithful to Black Adam to make that work. The DCEU, it's a double-edged sword. If you do a great job, the DCEU fans will love you forever. But if you do a bad job, you know, good luck to you. You know, I think it would be really unfortunate. And I played Black Adam, the Black Adam character, over on Thursday in the Injustice 2 press event. And, you know, it was very clearly a Middle Eastern character, and Dwayne Johnson is not Middle Eastern. So considering what happened lately with Ghost in the Shell, etc., I don't know if that could be something that could eventually come and hurt him, you know, so he should be a little bit wary of that, and perhaps maybe he wasn't the best person to cast as that, you know, taking that character away. I mean, you don't want an Exodus type situation. Like, is it just a problem if you cast a white actor in a role that's meant for a Middle Eastern character, or should you really cast at least somewhere in the correct region for the role? For instance, if I think they cast you know, actors of color that weren't from the Middle Eastern region for the upcoming live-action Aladdin, I think that would be a problem. So, but I'm curious, what do you think of Dwayne Johnson? What are your thoughts on him right now? I think that luckily for him, Vin Diesel seems to be such a problem with the Fast and Furious franchise that nobody feels, you know, everyone feels like, save the franchise, Dwayne. I think that that's the narrative that's starting to take shape. But I wonder, do you feel like there's too much Dwayne Johnson? Do you think he's doing a good job? And I think, you know, I told you I do have a question as to his taste level as he starts to produce his own work. And we'll see what the case is with. You're going to get a very good idea. Because I thought Ballers sometimes, I've just watched a few episodes of Ballers, but I stopped watching it because it wasn't the Dwayne Johnson that I personally like as a fan, as a moviegoer. But some of you have told me that's closer to what his wrestling persona was like. So I think that maybe as he moves more into stuff that he controls himself, that old persona might come out, and it might not be as, I'm sure some people will still love it, but it might not cast as wide a net as his movie persona has. So that's something he should be careful about. We'll see. But I do love Dwayne Johnson. Central Intelligence was a great movie. So I'm curious, write your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, please write your thoughts down below about today's top 3 stories, Corey's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions, of course, that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.